didn't know where their parents were, if they died or anything. Most of the recruitment agencies took this opportunity to traffic young girls and young children for sexual exploitation and forced labor. So natural disasters are not just ecological events. They can also be opportunities for exploiters in order to get what they want from the community, particularly young children. Now, it is also in these times of hopelessness and despair that families consider out-migration as an option to survive. Thus, temporary migration can be considered as an adaptation response or option to climate stress or lack of sustainable livelihoods in their communities. According to Colson, distress migration decisions are shaped by both local and external institutions. Displaced environmental migrants can be locally displaced and rely heavily on social capital, community networks, and economic resources to make their decisions. People rely on relatives, friends during emergency situations, and after that, go back again in their communities. So you have, a lot of our helpers, for instance, would, come back to us to help in the household if, they have no sustainable livelihood or if they've had a tragedy in their region. This is a normal circular migration of people from the rural areas to the urban areas. Or they can choose to be assisted by agencies and relocate camps for temporary or long-term assistance. And the third option that normally happens is that when the emergency or natural disaster is over time, happens every year, one after the other, people can decide to relocate in camps that are set up by the government. But that too is rarely chosen because people want to be very close to their areas of employment or labor opportunities. So many choose to stay in ecologically threatened areas such as coastal areas or very congested urban areas that are hardest hit when there are strong typhoons. So I'd like to show you a little bit of next please, table, I think, yes. So you have a typology of migrants here that would be classified according to whether or not they are temporary or seasonal or temporary. So you'd have 4 columns there, and you have what we call the direct and indirect climate change, and the type of movement of people and the time span that they go away from their communities. So as Charles again mentioned a while ago, climate change does not normally have different forms, and some of them take their toll after a long while, such as soil erosion and desertification. So you'd have gradual climate change that then causes drought or degradation of the environment, that causes people to move for seasonal labor migration or temporary circulation. And you'd have chronic disasters that could also have, compel people to move out for longer times, but would still be, they would not consider permanent, but return to their communities. And you'd have the episodic or sudden climate change that then forces people to really go out, for a long period of time, either a month or two. So rarely do people who are affected by, particular communities go out en masse, and find some other areas to live. They do return to their communities. And the sudden or gradual climate change of extreme temperatures that would then affect whole communities and whole countries that would have to then resort to permanent migration, such as Kiribati. Okay, next please. I'd like to be a little bit closer to home, and I'll cite some examples in the Philippines. We know that South and Southeast Asia are particularly vulnerable and environmentally at risk. For instance, major cities with dense populations are located in Jakarta, Shanghai, Manila, Bangkok, and Mumbai are almost, just a few feet above sea level. meters above sea level, and these are all, inundated by floods seasonally. Changing patterns will have serious impacts in sub-Saharan Africa, leading to drought and famine. We all know that. And small islands are particularly vulnerable to submersion. So semi-arid and arid regions are now experiencing these climate change impacts and are, of course, transferring to other countries, African countries nearby, that then also stimulates conflict and ethnic tensions. Next, please. The Philippines is a prime example of a climate change country that has experienced, many of these things. It is in the ring of fire, and the islands are frequented by natural calamities as typhoons and cyclones. Natural disasters are very serious constraints to development, because in the Philippines an average of 20 typhoons enter the Philippine territory every year, with eastern Visayas and northern Luzon and southern Luzon as the most affected areas, destroying crops during harvest time and agriculture and property. The extent to which the Philippines has experienced these ecological accidents are many, but those that come to mind immediately are, of course, the Ormoc tragedy that inundated and submerged the whole Ormoc city. I've done field work in Ormoc, and I could die just remembering all those people I've worked with that really were drowned there. The Cherry Hill landslide, the Payatas garbage slide in 2000, horrible garbage dump that where people drowned. Baguio La Trinidad landslide, in Camiguin flash floods, southern latest Surigao disaster, Aurora floods, and the more recent Reming and Frank in Bicol. These hazards are not just hazards, they are costly hazards. Philippines spends an average of 15 billion, next please, pesos per year in direct damages between 1970 to 2000, as well as in terms of human lives, which average 866 people per year. This may not appear so much compared to Bangladesh and to China, but they do have very important impacts in terms of human lives, in terms of damages, because we have all of them: typhoon, earthquake, volcano, floods. Now, what else could happen? The figures do not include the direct or social impacts, which clearly show the link between poverty and the vulnerability of people to natural disasters. Due to poverty, also increasing population and lack of tenure, many are forced to live and work in high-risk areas, such as near places where, very near volcanoes. People just refuse to live because that's where they get their sustenance, their livelihood, because these areas are very fertile, and also in coastal areas.